Sarah Sanders, in a recent trip to North Korea, reveals that the head of the government, Kim Jong-un, flirted with her as press secretary to Donald Trump. Boy. Nancy Pelosi, unfortunately, is very pissed. In addition to asking for Donald Trump to release his tax returns, Pelosi's also demanding Sarah Sanders release her hairdresser's phone number. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Afternoon's LALATE with a special report on stimulus and states. This is in lieu of incredible comments overnight from the president and why they may help or hurt the second stimulus debate and package that's going to get debuted next week. This is Afternoon's LALATE, our 2-hour programming block that starts every day with a check. Today will be a special report in addition to hazard pay. And then FPUC, got to tune in for that. And finally, rent. Big news. Let's get right to it. State and local, state and local, state and local. Money for state and local. It's $915 billion proposed by Nancy Pelosi in her second stimulus package, a package which no one in the Republican Party wanted. So next week what they're going to do is going to introduce a bill, a $500 billion bill that doesn't have anything for state and local, which will be in the bill thereafter, valued at about $615 billion. It seems fine. It seems totally logical. The most urgent things that are being sent out to the American people, checks, stimulus checks, FPUC benefits, will be in this bill next week, and that state and local could be done later on. And then came this. Overnight, the president suddenly started talking about state and local. I saw it, and my eyes started to roll. Yes, in very strange and particularly not good timing, the president is now making state and local a bigger national news story than it even was 24 hours ago, right on the eve of his party to introduce a bill that does not have anything for state and local in there to get that relief out to you very quickly. It's very confusing and not particularly coherent. It's imperative that the federal government review the use of federal funds by jurisdictions that permit anarchy, violence, and destruction in American cities, said Trump in a 5-page memo released late yesterday and announced more today to the Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought and Attorney General Bill Barr. What's going on? It's a 5-page legal memo that says that federal funds currently allocated to the cities of New York, Seattle, District of Columbia, and Portland, Oregon should not get that money currently allocated them for state and local because of certain situations in those cities. While at any other time the letter would stand on its own regard as its own particular issues, its timing is really not good. As you sit here today and wonder, wait a second, after weeks of haggling and confusion over state and local for purposes of second stimulus and taking state and local out of second stimulus to get relief checks out to people, why is the president suddenly putting focus back on state and local? The memo is called Memorandum on Reviewing Funding to State and Local Governments Recipients that are Permitting Anarchy, Violence, and Destruction of American Cities. And this comes on the cusp of Republicans saying that state and local governments shouldn't receive funds. The bottom line is, as you sit here today, and Americans are going to understand the importance of getting second stimulus checks out in a stimulus package next week, the importance of getting extension of FPUC, suddenly the detractors of the actual bill that's going to be introduced next week, who would have argued that it doesn't have money for state and local, now have this as another reason to argue about why state and local is being left behind. Ironically, this statement and this memo by the president is counterintuitive to Mark Meadows' statements earlier this week. And at that point, we seemed totally fine, but with this sentence, this memo, we don't seem so good. Let me explain to you what's going on for purposes of optics. State and local governments need money under a second stimulus package. That money doesn't have to come before your stimulus checks. It shouldn't come before your stimulus checks. It shouldn't hold up your stimulus checks. It shouldn't have anything to do with your stimulus checks. But finally, everyone understood that the Temple of Doom was strangleholding your stimulus checks for upwards of weeks because she wanted a bailout of state and local, and that she didn't want to do a standalone bill for your stimulus checks because she thought state and local money would never be allocated. Okay. The Republicans came back, specifically Mark Meadows, and said, no, we're going to give stimulus checks. We'll do a standalone bill for stimulus checks, and we'll give you money for state and local. Calm down. It seemed all fine. It was fine with the exception of, the Temple of Doom not agreeing upon the amount of money for state and local, but the proposals seemed fine. What happened up to this memo was no less than maybe 48 hours ago. Mark Meadows said state and local will be in the second stimulus package, the third stimulus package, which will come somewhere in October. We're going to do second stimulus package next week for checks, FPUC, testing, and schools. That will get that money done right away, a 1-week turnaround time to become law. That's his representation. Great news. Then he also said that bill will be $500 billion. Great news. And then a bill thereafter in October would be $650 billion that would deal with this, state and local. Really great news. It made total sense. It was exactly what the viewers of this channel and the American people have been wanting for weeks. State and local should not take precedence. State and local is not urgent. State and local can come after your checks, which you've been waiting for since May. And then came the statement by the president. As though, you sort of deal with the problem by saying, I'll deal with it in October. We're not dealing with it now. I just don't want to hear about it now. That was Mark Meadows' statement on behalf of the president. We're not going to deal with state and local now. We'll deal with it in October. We're dealing with checks for American people. We're going to deal with FPUC. The president came out and said, no, we're going to deal with state and local right now, and we're going to start taking back money we already gave them. Ooh. Just no, don't do it now. Can you release the memo in October? Not now. We need people's checks to go out now, Mr. President. According to the memo, federal agencies will be given 2 weeks to submit a report to the director of OMB detailing federal funds provided to Seattle, Portland, New York City, D.C., or any of components of those 4 cities, all of which the Democratic mayors have criticized the president in the past 4 weeks. Okay, so they have 2 weeks to submit this proposal. Guess what happens in the next 2 weeks? Negotiations to get your second stimulus checks out. Why is the discussion of your second stimulus checks in a standalone bill that's $500 billion that does not include state and local, that was so cleanly drafted that took away the distraction of state and local from the whole talk of next week, is suddenly going to get smacked on the side with a discussion of 2-week deadline to submit reports about state and local? Not a good move, Mr. President. Should have waited to have the reports due 4 weeks from now, after we get our checks. Legal experts are fuming, and of course, guess what that does? Yeah, legal experts are going to be booked on Fox and booked on CNN and booked on MSNBC, and they're going to be talking about this defunding of state and local exactly when we're doing a bill that doesn't have state and local in it, that has your stimulus checks that you need right now. If anything ever had bad timing, this one really does. As soon as I saw this, I said, this has to have a special report. This is a campaign document coming out of the White House since Sam Berger, senior official at OMB, told the Washington Post any restriction on funding in courts will immediately be sued and almost struck down. And, the garbage can is taking the stuff to court as well. The memo instructed Barr to identify our anarchistic jurisdictions. Oh, charming. So we're identifying anarchistic jurisdictions in a 2-week time in which we're trying to get people's stimulus checks out and not try to talk about state and local. We're not trying to talk about state and local. Why are we talking about state and local now? The memo does not explain the reasonable measures in there. Oh, my goodness. After Barr identified these places, then they have 30 days for the head of agencies on restricting eligibility or otherwise disfavoring the maximum extent permitted by law, those receipt of federal grants. And understand the words used are federal grants. Guess what state and local is considering federal grants? If you don't understand what's going on, it is just a bad choice of timing. The Temple of Doom wants $915 billion for state and local under second stimulus package. No one in their right mind is going to give her that. Why? Because state and local only need about 200 to 300 billion, not 900 billion. Why do they need anything? Well, under the first stimulus package, they got money. They got fortunes of money. They got fortunes of money because their governments were shut down. Their offices were closed. More importantly, businesses in their jurisdiction, businesses locally in their cities, business locally in their states, were shut down. They weren't getting revenue taxes to operate their states or cities. So the federal government, under the first CARES Act, gave them a lot of money. Has some of that money still sat around? Absolutely. Has a lot of that money not been used? Absolutely. Do they need more money? Yes. How much more money do they need? The apparent shortfall, what's called shortfall on budget, inability to make budget constraints because of shut down businesses that aren't paying tax, that aren't generating sales tax, is at about $150 billion nationally, including all state and local, about $150 billion shortfall. Mark Meadows dealt with this very clearly earlier this week with just one of the most comprehensive interviews I have seen about second stimulus in over 2 weeks, that said we're going to do 150 billion, we're going to double it, and we're going to get 300 billion. It's based upon GDP, it's based upon lack of growth, and you know what? It will provide sustainability for state and local, not just through COVID-19 now, but into early part of next year. Great. Amen. And he said we're going to do $300 billion in a third stimulus package, which will be done in October probably. He didn't say the date, but it seemed from his discussions that it would be October because they got to do that federal budget bill by September 30th. So it'll be in October. It'll be after your checks. I mean, it's not involving your checks, which is what we want. And we were so good to them. We were so good. We weren't going to do state and local, talk about state and local, argue about state and local. We just weren't until this memo from the president. This comes now on the heels of what else? News reports now putting state and local front and center because the president has been tweeting it up a lot. There's an old story in the news business. You don't want to talk about it, let the story die. Just don't talk about state and local. Well, because the president talked about state and local, now what's going on is it's front and center. Washington lawmakers are still at an impasse over the next coronavirus bill. And probably the biggest stumbling block remains the amount of money that would go to state and local help, says the report. Both sides have dug in their philosophical grounds, says Mark Mazur, director of the Urban Brookings Policy Tax Institute, minutes ago. This is a new report today. The lessons from the Great Recession of 07, 08, and 09 was that state and local governments was a drag on the economy because they had such a drop-off in revenues. That's the lack of sales tax revenue. You see what's going on is not so much what's in this article. It's that it's so many new articles now published in the last 24 hours about state and local makes me concerned about the focus. The focus should be your checks. The focus should be the first stimulus package, getting your checks out. The focus should be getting that $500 billion bill approved next week. It should be support of the check, support of FPUC, support of everything that's going to happen next week. And so for the president to get off of message and suddenly talk about something that's not happening next week, but is really sort of the core of the battleground in October, really now almost potentially, hopefully not, but may give ammunition to the Temple of Doom. She may say, here's the president not wanting to provide for state and local, and now he's trying to extract money already given to state and local. He's the evil empire. Don't allow him to not provide money to state and local. And here's the new stimulus package debut this week that doesn't have state and local in it. Of course, she'll tell you the incorrect story. She won't mention that the state and local money is coming in the next bill. But that's why the message is wrong. they really have to do a domino effect. So the states are going to cut their budgets, which they're required to do by law. The federal government has already sent hundreds of billions of dollars in aid to states, says Adam Michael, senior policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation. Really good point. I mean, that's a great point by him. But it comes after the president says, hey, we may take the money back. Okay, just don't say it this week, President. All these decisions can be best made and handled by the state and local government, says Michelle, or Michael. Needless to say, will they? Enhanced unemployment benefits will likely also be part of the bill next week, says Mazur. Both parties need to agree upon how much money. Democrats have called for $600 a week. Yeah, I know that, and you know that, but it's not going to be $600 a week. As we sit here tonight, or this afternoon, the confusing news is, will Republicans stay on message with a president who is now talking about everything that shouldn't be in the stimulus package at a time in which we should be talking about what is in the stimulus package? Of a personal note, in preparing for today's broadcast for afternoon's LALATE and reviewing statements from Meadows and Mnuchin and McConnell and Pelosi and Trump and everyone involved and Schumer, the news articles out there today all had an inherent slant of negativity, not about the relief about it, but that it may not be enough relief. Unemployment numbers, FPUC may not be enough, LWA may not be enough, eviction moratorium may not be enough relief. Everything had a negative slant to why it may not be enough. And unfortunately, at a time in which there should be an optimism and positivity about a bill that will alleviate some of the concerns next week with stimulus check and FPUC, that bill's not getting front and center attention again. It seems as though every time there's something to get money to you, the message is always changed as though it's not getting money to someone else. And so what you need to do is keep it on message. You need to keep it on message to ensure stimulus or seats for stimulus, that elected officials understand, if you don't give me stimulus, you're not going to get reelected. Stop talking about everything else before my stimulus. Direct deposits, direct receipts are the most important way to stimulate an economy. Putting money in the hands of people. As the shark himself, Kevin O'Leary, recently said, when you're looking at an economy that's trying to rebound and you're looking at families hurting, the way you stimulate the economy is putting the hands in the hands of American citizens. You put it in their hands in the form of stimulus. You put it in their hands in the form of unemployment benefits. You put it in their hands in the form of enhanced unemployment benefits. You put it in their hands of hazard pay. You put it in the hands of things that goes right in their pocket. It doesn't go into a government that then filters it down to you. You don't put it in a city that goes then figures out and may give you a little bit of the money. You don't put it into PPP, which then they may give you the money. You put it right in the hands of the people who need it most. And that's the great news. That's the great news. As the spirit of this channel continues to grow, I stay on point with what is the most important thing for you, not what is not the most unimportant thing that everyone should be focusing on. So as you go forward, focus on what's important to you and what message needs to be focused upon for others. And don't get your attention span and don't dedicate time looking at things that don't concern you, that detract from you getting the relief that you're owed. Go to the front of this channel and hit the subscribe and alert button. Boy, we're trying to add some more subscribers and we're doing quite well. Thank you. Good. We're trying to go to 250, 250,000. No one has done in the history of YouTube. This is now the most watched stimulus channel on the net. So let's keep it going. It's a battle. It's a battle and I'm in for it. But you got to help as well. Subscribe to this channel. When you subscribe, you'll get a little red bell icon next to your name. If you don't have that red thing next to your name, then go into the comment, into the pinned comment by me that shows you what you do to ensure you have a red icon next to your name. Trying to get to 250,000 subscribers in the next 2 weeks. Let's get it done. We're at 233 I think today. Next, like this video. Liking the videos really helps. Really, really helps. And I don't mean like 1,000 likes. I mean like 10,000 likes, 20,000, yeah, 200,000 likes. And the more likes, the better. It helps the algorithm so that this video appears higher in the rankings than other videos that don't provide incorrect information and provide false hope and confusing information and just inaccurate reporting. Ultimately, what happens is when other people are looking for the same subject matter that you're looking for on YouTube, they'll find this video and not stuff that doesn't inform them at all. Coming up next is FPUC with big developments. Got to tune into that as well. And then tune in for hazard pay. Actually, tune in for rent, which, boy, big developments, which I never saw. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay in LA for more.